Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Mason. We're doing this on Thanksgiving morning. Rick was covering NKU basketball yesterday. They had an afternoon game in Charleston, which didn't go so well. But happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And hopefully you've digested your turkey by the time that you see this podcast. I've got a rankings question for an Ask Skinny Anything coming up at the end of the podcast, Rick. If we've got some others, we'll do those too. We got a lot to get to, from Bengals to college basketball to college football and so much more.
Yeah, it might be there's a lot going on, but it might be an abbreviated version of the podcast this week since we are on the holiday, and we do have plenty of Ask Skinny Anything Thanksgiving edition questions to get to. So we'll speed run some of this stuff here. We'll start with college basketball because, quite frankly, that's what I want to do, and I'm in charge of bringing these topics up. So first of all, let's start with Xavier because they played the big games of the week. They had the big game last night on Wednesday night before we were recording this. They went 1-1 at the Fort Myers tip-off. They beat South Carolina 75-66. Then they lost to Michigan 78-63. Skinny, what was your takeaway from the 1-1 experience for the Musketeers in Fort Myers?
Well, I like you giving Xavier 10 extra points there, 78-63. That was kind of you.
Oh, I'm typo. Sorry.
No, I just thought you were trying to be nice for Thanksgiving. That's all.
Buddy, I'm running on like a half hour of sleep over the last 2 days, so I've got nothing for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take it as a one-off. Ryan Conwell didn't make shots. Zach Freemantle didn't make shots. And if those two guys aren't going to make – Davey McKnight didn't make shots. If those guys aren't going to make shots, you're not going to win, right? I mean, you could argue the defense could have been a little bit better, sure. But, I'm taking it as a one-off. I'm not in complete panic mode yet if I'm a Xavier fan. Disappointing to lose by that margin for sure.
Yeah, I think that's what really stunned some Xavier fans is the fact that they got sort of blasted early, got out of this game, and then were just playing catch-up the rest of the way and never really made a run. I mean, they got it down to 8, but they weren't really threatening at any point in that game. Even when they made some runs at Michigan, it seemed like every time Michigan either hit a big three then or Xavier had a defensive lapse and there was a breakdown and the Michigan got a dunk at the rim. They just couldn't pile up enough stops in a row to give the offense enough of a chance. But the offense sputtering like they did in the first half, I mean, you get nothing out of Davion McKnight. You get nothing out of Dalen Swain. And the bench really hasn't given you much yet this entire season. That's becoming a problem for this team. We talked all offseason about how they were going to outscore their opponents, how they had multiple weapons, a lot of different guys who could score for them. If they're limited to just basically 3 starters handling all of the scoring load, and one of them disappears like Davion McKnight did in this game, they're going to have some trouble this year. So my biggest concern coming out of this would be that they need to get some of those other guys on track on the offensive side.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's their capabilities, right? If that's their strength to get on track. I don't know who else could be a consistent double-figure scorer. Do you?
Well, right now it feels that way, but I mean, a couple weeks ago, everyone was talking about how many weapons this team had. Dalen Swain was an NBA prospect, according to some. Dante Maddox was going to come in and be a big-time scorer off the bench. Trey Green is a tremendous shooter, but they just don't trust him enough to leave him on the floor all that long. So, I think that if I'm a Xavier fan, that would be the most disheartening part of all this right now is the fact that this team went from being a group that felt like it had a lot of options, was going to have some depth, to last night in the postgame press conference, Sean Miller is telling everybody how Michigan just wore them out, and that was the reason they didn't have a single field goal in the final 7 minutes of action.
Is there enough evidence to support where they are in Ken Palm on both offense and defense, which is around the low to mid-50s in both, which doesn't really bode well because you'd like to be at least in one of those?
Well, it is indicative of where they are right now. I'll put it that way. Now, does that mean they're stuck there for the rest of the season? Right. No, I think they can be better than that offensively for sure. But like I said, I think coming out of this event, the big concern is that maybe this team isn't as potent as we all thought offensively. And one of the things is, Skinny, they lost Desmond Claude, a guy who could get to the bucket, get into the paint off the dribble, break some defenses down. They don't really have that guy anymore, a guy who can beat his man one-on-one. And when you play a defense like this Michigan team's defense, where they're trying to get out on your perimeter shooters, they're not helping on your drivers, they're letting you play one-on-one, and you've got guys that can't win one-on-one battles off the dribble, it can be difficult to run your offense and score. And I think that's what you saw.
Yeah, and that's probably the formula for Big East teams then, right? And then you see that formula, and you're good enough probably as a Big East team to do that too.
Well, Creighton plays that way, certainly. I don't know if their guards are as long and as athletic as Michigan, so it might not be as easy, but they have a better center in Ryan Kalkbrenner blocking shots at the rim. And then the real matchup I'm sure everyone's got on their mind right now is that's the exact style of defense Cincinnati plays. I mean, that is Wes Miller's MO. He doesn't want to help off of shooters. He wants to stay out on them. They try to force some turnovers in that way, and they have shot blockers at the rim. And so Xavier is going to have to figure this out quickly because the crosstown shootout isn't far away.
No, that's exactly right. And, you'd hate to go in with two ugly losses on your resume if you see, smacks them around too. UC's KenPom numbers are good. Kentucky's KenPom numbers are good. And I had to search for Xavier this morning, for goodness sakes. I didn't realize they'd be that far down the list, to be honest with you.
Yeah, when you think about those opening games where they struggled, to beat the spread, they're favored by 25-ish points, whatever it was, and you only win by just a little over double digits. That sets you back in those KenPom numbers, and that's what they're staring down right now. They'll host South Carolina State on Sunday. But I mean, I don't want to sound too negative. It is also an MTE event where weird results happen all the time. They got an impressive win over South Carolina, which I wasn't sure how that game was going to go. I thought that would be a good test for them, and they looked good in that in the second half. So again, it's not a time to panic yet.
No, I take it.
It is time to start asking some questions.
Yes. Yeah. I take it for right now as a one-off until I see otherwise.
Yeah, we're gonna need more evidence on both sides with Xavier, positive or negative, to get more of a picture. Cincinnati beat Georgia Tech 81-58 and Alabama State 77-59. Wes Miller seemed okay with the Georgia Tech win, which you would hope he would be, considering they went on the road and blasted a high major opponent. But then he was unhappy with the Alabama State performance. Said he felt bad for people who paid money to watch that game. One of my takeaways, I know this felt like kind of ho-hum games for Cincinnati this week because they won easily, but I thought Day Thomas coming back and hitting 5 threes in the two games is a nice sign for Cincinnati fans.
Yeah, he hit 3 in the game last night, the Alabama State game. So, I take last night as a day before a holiday kind of a game. You just get through it, you move on to the next. I don't take much more out of that, no matter how you want to slice. I get what he's giving coach, lessons here, if you will, and trying to be critical in a double digit, almost 20-point win. I fully understand that, but listen, to me, it's a game before Thanksgiving. Kids get through it, you move on to the next.
Yeah, we've played a crappy schedule to this point, and I'm trying to keep my guys' attention, so I'm going to act mad tonight because it's time, because there were some sloppy possessions. But I'm with you. If UC had been struggling through earlier bye games, maybe like Xavier did initially, then you're much more concerned about this performance against Alabama State. But considering they've been blowing away everybody that they've played to this point, this game is totally just you don't care who you're playing in this matchup against Alabama State. You're overlooking them. You're excited about what you're going to do over the next couple of days that you have off during the holiday maybe, and that's really what it is.
You got 3 games to worry about: Nova, Xavier, Dayton in the non-con, and again, win 2 of the 3 of those, and you set yourself up for a good seed if you do well in the Big 12.
And one of those games are coming up next, as they will play at Villanova on Tuesday. Now, Villanova is struggling in a big way, but they're still clearly the best test I think that UC has faced. They're top 50 in KenPom right now, and they are a desperate team who's going to be hosting you in their building.
Yeah, they're 42 in net. That even on the road, that would not get you a quad one, or would?
Oh yeah, that's a quad one.
Quad one. Okay, that is a quad one then. Okay, so that would be their first quad one of the year too.
Depends on if they stay there. They might fall outside the top 75.
Well, that's true.
By
that's
the
true.
end of the year.
True.
But for right now, it would be a quad one game. NKU beat Kentucky State 85-59 and then lost at College of Charleston 79-64. They fell behind by 19 points in the first half of this College of Charleston game. They got blitzed by some shooters for College of Charleston who hadn't been shooting well to this point in the season. And then they battled back. They cut it to 6 a few times in the second half, but ultimately couldn't get any closer than that. And they lose by double digits. Skinny, how do you react to this 1-5 start for NKU when you've played a schedule like they have?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. The Kentucky State game was their bye game, if you will. So they got a bye win there. Charleston's a decent enough mid-major team to play them in their place. I didn't actually expect them to go there and win. They were not favored to win that game either. So I think you just have to take the lessons and hope that, once you get into league play, I mean, you gauge the league far better than I do. I mean, is Charleston better than most in the Horizon, you think?
Yeah, I think Charleston would be picked to win the Horizon League this year, probably. So they've got the player of the year in their conference. They're picked to finish at the top of their conference. So that is a game that you're not necessarily expected to win. I would say it was disheartening the way you came out and started the game to fall behind in such a big hole. You played well for the final, 25 plus minutes of it maybe, but or well enough to be competitive in the final 25 plus minutes. I look at it from the perspective of NKU probably shouldn't be any better than 2-4 right now. You'd expect them to win that game at home against Nichols,
Yes.
but they should probably be 2-4 right now had they played well. There are some concerns that they haven't played well in all of these games. There have been some really bad moments through stretches. I think the fact that Dan Goretzka is starting to come around, he had by far his best game of the season at Charleston, including a late game dunk where he put up someone on a poster at the rim that was like unlike anything he's done in practice or games to this point, which I think, again, is a sign that he's starting to build some confidence playing at the Division I level, all of a sudden get a little more comfortable. If they can get him going, they need another option to take a little bit of pressure off of Sam Vincent in the backcourt. Also, Trey Robinson played much better in this Charleston game than he has been, but I think it's clear that he's not equipped to shoulder the scoring load by himself as like the go-to guy. If they can get another really good athlete to create some mismatches for them on the perimeter, I think that'll go a long way.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And they will host Bellarmine on Saturday. So an old Division II rivalry,
It's
rekindling that flame here at Truist Arena. It'll be interesting to see what type of crowd they get because it's great for the Cincinnati game, obviously, but the Kentucky State game was completely empty. So it'll be interesting to see if Bellarmine can bring a crowd this time. And then Kentucky beat Jackson State 108-59 and Western Kentucky 87-68. They'll host former Xavier assistant Jonas Hayes and his Georgia State team on Friday. They finally had a bad shooting game by their standards against Western Kentucky. They went 8 of 29 from 3. They had some troubles putting the toppers away. What did you think of that game, Skinny, where they actually struggled to shoot a little bit?
Again, it's holiday week games, man, and they're just goofy sometimes. Unless you're those big events playing major schools like the Maui or the Battle for Atlanta, so that happens. And Western's a decent program for sure. It is funny, as much fun as this Kentucky offense has been, right? And they're putting up all these points. Their Ken Palm rating on offense is in double digits, it's like 13, and they're actually pretty good defensively. So, to me, I think they won a little bit of this with some defense for a change. And still, if you're, and not you, if there's those that are looking and going, only a 19-point win over Western, get over yourselves. I mean, you're not winning every game by 30 points.
Yeah, I mean, they struggled to pull away in this one. I didn't think they looked very good. They did finish it off the way they needed to. But to your point, I think they showed a little bit. Now, it is Western Kentucky, who isn't great, but they showed a little bit of toughness through those stretches where they weren't making shots. And to this point, they really haven't had to deal with that. They've just been knocking down threes. The offense has been flowing. It's become easy to them for the most part. This was one of the first times where it was like, okay, it's a little bit of a slog tonight. They've got to find some other ways to win this game. And it took them a little bit of time, but eventually they did that. Now, can you do that if you're on the road in the SEC? Maybe not, but I don't think it was like a terrible showing or anything. I think there were some positives to take away from this win, even though it maybe wasn't the performance fans wanted. The other thing is Otega Owe is awesome. Each game, he just impresses me more and more. He might be their best player.
I think he is. I mean, just because Jackson Robinson's been so up and down offensively, I think we expected him to be that guy, and he just hasn't. I think the capability is certainly there, but again, he's just been this past game was another example. He was just cold. And, Otega Owe just does so many different things on both ends of the floor that I think he is their best player.
That's the thing. He impacts the game in a lot of different ways, but his scoring has been way more consistent than I expected it to be because I knew we could bring some of the other things. I just didn't realize he would be this type of scorer on a regular basis. Maybe that'll change when they get into conference play, but he's been impressive.
And I think Lamont Butler's toughness, it's going to carry through in a lot of games. I mean, he does everything.
And I think he's the type of guy that sees you through a win like Western Kentucky. He's the one that doesn't let you go and get out of sorts and lose a game like that when you're not hitting shots. All right. Anything else on the college basketball side of things before we switch gears?
I got to tell you, man, Auburn's resume at the moment is off the freaking charts. Is it not?
Auburn, I mean, how great has this week of basketball been? It always is good on Feast Week, but we've just had some craziness. I mean, the Big East is in the shambles at the top. UConn's getting ran out of the gym by everybody. They lost 3 in a row. Creighton's lost 3 in a row. St. John's has lost 2 in the last week. The top of the Big East is on fire right now, and not in a good way. So it's been a fun start to the college basketball season without a doubt.
And if you're a UC fan watching the Big 12, you see Gonzaga smack Baylor by, 30 earlier in the year, and then West Virginia turns around and knocks off Gonzaga.
Right. Just crazy. I mean, these MTEs, man, that like you never know. You can't read too much into the results. That's the one thing that is true every year about the college basketball season. All right, let's switch gears here to the Reds. The big story this week, obviously, they traded Jonathan India and Joey Weimer to the Royals for Brady Singer. Jonathan India didn't really have a spot on this team anymore, Skinny. What were your thoughts about the Reds finally pulling the trigger on a trade?
I think it just shows that they realize you cannot have enough starting pitching. I mean, if the problem is, what are you going to do with Brady Singer? What are you going to do with Andrew Abbott? Or what are you going to do with Nick Martinez? Fine, that's a problem. That's a good problem to have, because you're going to need anymore in baseball. You probably need 10 starting pitchers to get through a season. Even a playoff team probably needs 8 to 10 starting pitchers to get through a season. So you cannot have enough. And to give up a guy who, to your point, in a perfect world, and again, we don't know the perfect world of Matt McClain. Is he going to be able to play or not? I mean, he's played this fall, and that's all well and good. And hopefully that's the sign of things to come. But for a guy who wasn't in your plans, if everything falls into place to be a starter, and you got a starting pitcher and a fairly capable one at that, I'd sign me up for that deal.
I'm with you. I think this is a deal that you basically have to make if you're the Reds at this point. You strung out this Jonathan India thing as long as you could. It's time now to make a decision on him and move on from him if that's what you're going to do. And I think that's probably the right decision. Basically, you were hanging on to Jonathan India for the idea of maybe someone will get hurt. Like, that's what you're keeping him for, is like maybe someone's not going to be okay in the infield next year and you'll need to rely on him again like you did this past season. But we already saw what a Jonathan India-led Reds team looks like for stretches of last season, and it's not good enough. So I just don't think there was really any place for him. And
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm going perfect world. In a perfect world, Noelvi Marte bounces back as a hitter because gets the full off season and all those things. Matt McClain comes back and does what Matt McClain does. Ellie De La Cruz does what he does. You still have Jamer Candelario to fill in some at third base if need be. I think in a perfect world, those guys are all going to play 150 plus games. And so what does that mean for a Jonathan India? And so, Santiago Espinal, I think, proved he was at least a capable backup player that you don't want to play him in large spurts. But again, if he's going to take the 2 starts a week or 3 starts a week, I mean, let's just go 2 starts a week away from a couple of these guys, it's just as good as Jonathan India, in my opinion.
Right. And I know it's not going to be a perfect world. One of those guys aren't going to pan out. One of them might get hurt. That's fine. But I still don't think Jonathan India is going to be the difference that pushes you over the top if that's what you end up needing, And now I will say, I see a lot of Reds fans doing what we all do. You make a trade. It's the offseason. The Bengals are starting to struggle. So it's like, okay, let's get on the Reds hype train again. It's like, all right, Brady Singer's there. Now they've got another ace level starter to go with Hunter Greene. And guys, Brady Singer has struggled to giving up the home run. He's coming to pitch a Great American Ballpark. Like, let's see what he does here before we get all excited about him being a top of the rotation guy. I think it's a solid get. I hope it works out. But we've seen this happen enough to realize, let's not get all excited yet about thinking that the Reds are at the top of the National League Central because they added a middle of the rotation arm.
No, but I still think it's a good ad. I mean, it's a good ad for a guy who wasn't going to be in your lineup in all likelihood. I'm fine with that. I don't think he's a top level guy, but I think he's certainly a capable guy.
Totally agreed. And it was a trade that you definitely should have made. I just think it's probably a more of an even trade between the two teams than Reds fans feel like right now. I think Reds fans feel like they got a great deal and got a potential stud in Brady Singer. And it's like, well, you also might have got a guy that struggles giving up home runs and just came to one of the most home run hitter friendly parks in all of baseball. So he might end up stinking here for all.
Yeah. And anything you think about that move is going to be offset when the Reds sign Juan Soto anyway. So it's, your offseason is going to be great.
Great point. All right, let's keep it moving here with the Bengals. Bengals versus Steelers this week, Sunday, 1 p.m. We're at the winner go home portion of the schedule, I think, Skinny. I don't know. Maybe you have a few more tricks up your sleeve after last week's show, but what reasons are there for optimism about this matchup coming up?
I mean, Pittsburgh's offense just isn't very good. And yeah, you can say they're playing the Bengals defense, but they haven't been good against really anyone. That defense is great. There's no question about it. It is a very, very good defense. I think it's got a little bit better reputation for pressuring the passer than it really has done. And I think in that regard, if the Bengals can hold up in this game and not allow Joe Burrow to get hit 13 times and 12 times like he has been of late, I think he's going to have some level of success, enough to get him in the 20s. And I think in the 20s wins this game.
But do you think that's possible for the Bengals offensive line to keep Joe Burrow upright? I mean, they haven't done it against worse pass rushing attacks.
Well, again, I mean, but you're looking at also dropping back 56 times. If he tries to drop back 56 times in this game, that's probably a problem too.
Fair point. Joe Burrow's wrist was called into question this week. There was a question asked basically about how he's going to feel when the weather gets colder. And his answer got people a little bit worried. He said, that's a question that remains to be answered. I haven't experienced a cold weather game with that yet. In the past, when I've had injuries, cold weather does affect it. So we'll find out. Maybe I'll have a heater on the sideline or something. I haven't really thought about that yet, but we'll see. That was the only quote that I heard about the wrist. I don't know if there was more. I see a lot of headlines coming out after it about there's concern about the wrist, that Joe's bringing up that he might have issues with it. What was your take on what he said?
I was surprised at his honesty with it. And then it was followed up with, how did you throw in practice today? And he said, not great. And so it made you think, okay, it wasn't real like sickening cold yesterday, but it was cold enough. It wasn't comfortable to be outside, and to put the 2 and 2 together. You're thinking, man, is he setting himself up for, maybe not being 100% to play on Sunday? I don't think that's the case. I'll believe it when I see it, but his honesty was interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the type of guy who's like going to start faking an injury and then call it quits on the season or anything. So I don't think you have to worry about anything like that. I think this is just genuinely him being honest that either he's concerned about the wrist acting up, or maybe he's already feeling the wrist start to act up and he's worried about it getting worse. Obviously, if it's the latter, it's a real concern. If it's the former, I guess you just have to hope for the best if you're a Bengals fan. But I will admit that even though his exact quote isn't too concerning, the general vibes felt a little bit off.
Well, because this Sunday is going to be really cold. It's going to be high, maybe 30 degrees with some wind chill involved with that. And I think he probably realizes it is going to bug him a little bit. And
he's taking
the question is how much. Well, there's that part too. And keep in mind, he's listed each week on the injury report still. He's been a full participant, but it lists him on the injury report with the wrist, which means that he's still getting treatment on it at this point, which I guess makes sense. So that's not alarming, but just so people know, when you see him on the injury report where it says wrist full participant, means he's just getting treatment, which again, he's been getting all year. And,
it's not new.
Yeah, correct.
We are at the portion of this season, because the Bengals are struggling, where each week someone that is either no longer with the team, or maybe they're just a national personality, takes a shot at them and ownership, or however they're doing things. So this week we'll start with Joe Mixon. And Joe Mixon not only took aim at the organization and the coaching staff, how he's being used, he took aim at
them lame-ass beat writers.
Potentially you, Skinny. Was he talking about you? He said when it came down to it, it was an unfortunate situation where things changed a little bit, and obviously they had them fake-ass beat writers, reporters. I don't care. I'm not there anymore. When it comes down to it, my teammates know what it is. Who are the fake-ass beat writers, reporters? Like, which one of you doesn't actually have credentials or shouldn't actually have credentials?
I'm going to cite Ben Baby. You know what it is, Baby Ben? That's what he says. No,
is that who he was mad at? Was it James Rapine or Ben Baby?
I think he's probably mad at everybody, because everybody really took the Brian Callahan quote from last year and ran with it. I mean, I know I have, where it's we get what's blocked,
what was blocked,
and not much more. And it's true. I mean, all you had to do was watch him with your own eyes last year. He didn't run through tackles. He didn't run away from people. He is in an offense, though, and I will give him fairness. I never thought he was a great shotgun running back. I thought he was always a downhill, either coming as a single back, with a quarterback under center. I think that was when he was most effective. And so I will say, in fairness to Joe Mixon, I don't think he was in an offense that probably played to his strengths, but you weren't trying to play to his strengths. You were trying to play to Joe Burrow's strengths. And now he is in an offense that plays to his strengths. That being said, I don't have the number in front of me. I don't know if you have a second to look this up. Look up what Chase Brown is averaging yards per carry right now. I'm going to say it's probably 4.6-ish. And Joe Mixon's averaging 4.2. So you tell me, did they do the wrong thing, or did they do the right thing by both parties?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I don't have a huge issue with the change from Joe Mixon to Chase Brown. Now, Joe Mixon looks like he still has juice left. He still looks like a capable running back in the NFL, and he looks completely different from the guy that the Bengals had the last 2 seasons running behind their offensive line. He brought up the point about when it comes down to it, I'm going to do what the coach wants me to do. But at the same time, I'm going to play football. That's just what it is. You're not going to turn me into a robot. You're not going to turn me into a person that's not what I do. One thing that I can appreciate here in Houston is they utilize my skill set. I've always been a threat in the passing game. And one thing about here, they give me my screens. They give me my choices. They give me my flat routes that I can take. They give me all types of combinations. They utilize me. That may all be true. They may use him better. They may give him more opportunities. But Skinny, my problem with him is he is just a more physical, tougher to bring down runner for Houston than he was in Cincinnati. And that says to me, he quit on the Bengals to some extent. He wasn't happy with the way things were going for him. So he became this soft ass, weak runner. And whether it was getting in better shape before he went to Houston or just having a renewed sense of energy while he's out there because he likes their scheme better or likes the people he's playing for better, he is playing like a different player. And that's on him every much as it is on the Bengals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, I mean, he's having a fine year. He's not having a world-class year, for goodness sakes. Again, he's averaging 4.2 per carry. In 2 of his last 3 games, he's been held under 2 yards per carry in 2 of those last 3. What was the one Monday nighter? I think he went 23 carries for 41 yards. I think this past week in their loss to Tennessee, it was like 18 carries for 31 yards. I mean, so maybe he's running out of juice as the season's gone on.
I mean, it could be the case. We've seen that the last 2 years too, where he seems to slow down as the year goes on. I think that's enough on Joe Mixon. One of the other national personalities that was taking shots at the Bengals this week was Steve Young, Hall of Fame quarterback. He said, "I think what you got to do is not look at Joe Burrow," Young said. "You probably have to look at everyone else, including we don't do a good job of looking at the ownership in the NFL. And I think we should do more of that personally, because I think it speaks to a lot of what's happening on the field. Of course, we can't fire the owners. I'm just saying when things look really weird, go to the top and then work down." I mean, pretty generic comments from there. It's stuff we've heard time and time again about the Bengals. I don't think we're breaking any new ground. Is it interesting at all to you that it's coming from Steve Young? Do you think he has any interesting insights here?
Yeah, I just thought it was weird. No, I mean, I wrote a column last Friday basically pointing the finger at the front office and Duke Tobin for the mess that it's in and the mess it's heading in. I think if you have any common sense, everybody wants to scream at the coach that it's the coaching. And I'll go back to, again, everybody wants Lou Anarumo fired, right? Well, Lou Anarumo didn't remake this safety room. Lou Anarumo hasn't had Miles Murphy underproduced because Miles Murphy's underproduced or Joseph Osai underproduced. He's not been saddled with a Cam. I mean, it's not his fault that Cam Taylor-Britt has regressed. I don't know why he's regressed, but he's regressed. It's not. He's culpable for some of this, but at the same time, I mean, look at the roster, man. The roster just isn't very good.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on a lot of that. I will say certain things like, I mean, Cam Taylor regressing player development is part of what you do as a coach.
It is, Rick, but I mean, they've literally, he's spelled it out to us of the things that Cam needs to do better. And I guarantee you they've coached him on it. And yet he doesn't seem to carry that into games. Who's that fault on?
Well, I think there's definitely personal responsibility in all of that. I always feel that way. But at a certain point with Lou Anarumo, he has to take some ownership too. It's not all on the players.
Understood.
I mean, there is some player development that can take place. Guys can get better under his watch. Every draft pick doesn't have to be a flop under him. I mean, that could be part of what he does too.
That's a fair point. But at the same time, I just look at the way this roster has been pieced together, and they just haven't done a very good job of piecing it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We talked a lot about that last week, that, Duke Tobin is the guy that I would be most concerned about if I'm at the Bengals. I'm trying to figure out where we go from here. He would be the guy that I'm looking to replace. Now, obviously, you get into questions of scouting departments and resources and how much is being spent on all of that. And that's always a question with the Bengals that I don't have enough of the answers to. So I'm going to start at the guy that's in charge of all that stuff. And that is Duke Tobin right now, as far as I know. So that would be my target if I'm on a warpath this offseason to fix the franchise. But obviously, there's still some football to be played before we get there. And we'll have four or five more weeks probably of national people taking shots at the franchise and the ownership and coaching. So we'll continue to break those down as we go. College football, Ohio State blasted Indiana 38-15 last week. Now, Indiana did remain in the college football playoff field at number 11, Skinny. We had the new playoff bracket projection released. Number 1 seed Oregon Ducks, number 2 seed Texas Longhorns, number 3 seed Miami Hurricanes, and number 4 seed Boise State Broncos are the projected buys right now. Then the other matchups we have number 9 Tennessee at number 8 Georgia. The winner would play number 1 Oregon. Number 12 Arizona State at number 5
matchup.
Ohio State. Winner would play number 4 Boise State. Number 11 Indiana Hoosiers.
By the way, that's a great path for Ohio State if that were to come to fruition.
An incredible path. But I honestly feel that way about the 5 seed in general, regardless of how it happens for the 5 seed. Right. That 4 seed is always going to be the weak link in this bracket, just because of the way it's set up, unless they change how they're doing those buys and who they're giving them to. But you have 11 Indiana Hoosiers at number 6 Penn State. Winner would play Miami. And then SMU at Notre Dame. Winner would play Texas. Skinny, I guess the big topic here is Indiana remaining in the playoff field after the loss to Ohio State. Is that what you expected?
I thought they'd remain in. I mean, if they'd have lost 47-0, maybe not. And I think, that last touchdown by Ohio State, again, Ryan Day needs to coach his team. I'm not going to claim he piled it up, which I think he did, but neither here nor there.
You should. I think you should in this day and age. I mean, style points do matter somewhat.
No, but if you're the committee and you see that and you say, okay, I'm going to take that touchdown away in my mind. It's a 31-15 game. And even in the 31-15 game, really 2 special teams plays made the huge difference. The punt that went right through the punter's hands and then the punt returned by Caleb Downs for a touchdown. Ohio State did outplay Indiana clearly, but at the same time, I didn't think it was a god-awful showing by Indiana.
No, I thought the punt return broke their spirit. I mean, when that happened, the game was over, I thought.
Yeah, agree. I would agree with that.
Yeah. If that doesn't happen, there are a few plays in that game, that one being the biggest. There are a few plays where it felt like if those don't happen, that game could go a totally different way for Indiana. They could have stayed in it longer, but it felt like once they got behind the 8 ball a little bit, they were out of sorts, and it felt like, oh, here we go again type of situation with that matchup. So I think this Indiana team is still pretty good. I think they should be in the playoff field, but they're not as good as Ohio State. They're not as good as Oregon, I don't think. I mean, they're clearly not the top of the Big Ten.
I would agree with that, but I think they're worthy to be in. As much as I'm an SEC guy at heart, and I do think the SEC has cannibalized itself this year, I was better. I probably do, but you've also lost 3 games and you lost to god-awful Oklahoma by 3 touchdowns. That's on you, man.
Hold on, say that again. You broke up there.
No, I was just going to say, as much as I like the SEC, Rick, and I believe in the SEC, they've cannibalized themselves. And, Alabama on a neutral field is probably a touchdown favorite over Indiana, right? But at the same time, don't go lose by 3 touchdowns at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for Alabama at all.
I don't.
They've set their path.
Same for Ole Miss. Don't lose to Kentucky at home, and don't go lose to Florida.
Exactly right. Let's do our pick 'em now. You were 3-3 last week, or 49-37 overall. I was 5-1, so I'm coming close to breaking even now. 42-44. I'm going to get on the positive side of things here before it's all said and done. Your Minnesota plus 12 against Penn State covered. My best bet did not. And that brings us to Saturday at noon. We have Michigan at Ohio State. The Buckeyes are 20.5-point favorite. The total is 43.5. I'm
going to go Ohio State 37-7. I think they take out all the frustration of the last few years on woeful Michigan in this game.
So that is Ohio State and the over by 0.5 point as well.
Correct.
I'm at the same exact total of 44 points, getting it by 0.5 point. I'm going to say Ohio State 34, Michigan 10. So Ohio State in the over for both of us. That brings us to Saturday at noon. We've got Louisville is a 3.5-point favorite at Kentucky. The total is 48.5.
I told you I thought Kentucky go down and play Texas tough, and they did. And I thought Cutter Boley looked good at times. Missed a big throw when it was 24-14 that could have made that game closer at that point in time. That being said, Cutter Boley's making his first start. I know it's at home. It's now kind of the Kentucky bowl game, but that number just seems very short for me on the Louisville side of things. Louisville's not great defensively, but I just don't know with a young quarterback if Kentucky puts up enough points. I'll go Louisville 27, Kentucky 17.
So that's Louisville and the under there.
Correct.
27-17 puts you at 44. Total's 48.5. So Louisville in the under for you. I'm going Louisville 27, Kentucky 24. So I'm going to say Louisville wins the game. Kentucky stays close enough to cover it. and the game goes over. I have no idea what to expect in this one.
I really don't either. I mean,
every step of the way.
Like I said, I thought Cutter Bully looked good at times. He looked overwhelmed at times because Texas has a really good defense and pressured him. But I mean, maybe Louisville, because it doesn't have a good enough defense, he's got more time to throw and has a really good game. I'm really interested to see it.
Saturday at 6 p.m., we've got TCU at Cincinnati. TCU is a 3.5-point favorite. The total is 58.5.
I hate to do it.
They want you to bet on the Bearcats here.
I know. I hate to do this. I'm going to go TCU 31, UC 20. This just looks like this season has just disappeared for this team as week by week has gone on. They're playing for a bowl bid, playing at home. There's a lot of things playing for, but I just don't think they get it done. And TCU's playing better.
Yeah, I mean, TCU and the under for you there with that number. And I'm in basically the same exact boat. I said 34-20. So TCU and the under for me as well. Skinny, it just feels very similar to last year in that UC was competitive a month ago. And as they've lost a few games here, they've just kind of let the wheels fall off. And guys seem to be quitting on the season a little bit. Yeah,
and I mean, they don't throw the ball downfield like they did early in the year. And I don't know if Brendan Sorsby have a bad arm. It's a disaster, and it shouldn't be. You have a mobile quarterback. You have a good offensive line. You have good running backs, and yet it looks just pedestrian.
Yeah, just zero big play threat at all. And they have to string together these long drives with runs and these short passes that
and then they commit penalties
on trying to pick off. Yeah, it's tough to move the ball. So Sunday at 1 p.m., we've got Steelers at the Bengals. Bengals are a 2.5-point favorite. The total is 47.5.
Yeah, I'm taking one last swing at it. I'll go Bengals 23, Steelers weird score 18, because Steelers always seem to put up weird scores this year. So I'll go Bengals 23-18.
So that's the Bengals and the under for you. I can't do it. Steelers 24, Bengals 21. This team's, they'll be in the game, but they're not going to win a close game. I just can't pick them to do that at this point. I'd like to think they can, but
I'm not a big trend guy. I know people talk trends when they talk gambling, right? Yeah. But the Bengals have won the last 3 years coming out of the bye week, and they've been very good overall coming out of the bye week the last 3 years.
That's a good little nugget for you. I've still got to pick the Steelers here in our pick. On best bet, what do you got for me?
I'm going back to the Big Ten. I'm going to go back to the home teams that are either small or either dogs or small favorites. In this case, Wisconsin's getting one at home to Minnesota. I think Minnesota's getting too much credit for that Penn State game, and people saw that game. It was on national TV, and you're thinking, well, Minnesota is a pretty good team, and they are a pretty good team. But I just think Wisconsin at home, you're getting one. I think honestly, I'd lay 3 or 4 in this game if I was playing it with Wisconsin. So I'm going to take my 1 point and gladly run to the bank.
All right, you doing Wisconsin +1 or money line? Not that it matters.
Let's go money line just because it's right there. And actually, that's a Friday game, a Friday noon kickoff. You got all that Friday football for you.
All right, so get that one in early. I'm going with Indiana -29.5 against Purdue. Purdue is just so bad, and Indiana's coming off that game. They're going to be ready to take it out on someone.
Yeah.
Indiana is legit. They're not a team that's going to
I think they are too.
Loss to Ohio State and then get embarrassed and have it linger. It's going to be like man, I can't believe we did that. Let's try to rectify the situation and blow Purdue out by 150 points, see if that helps us at all, and go from there. But I think this is going to be a bloodbath. So Indiana -29.5.
Fair enough.
All right. Ask anything. If Cincinnati sports teams were Thanksgiving dishes, which dish would each team be?
I saw this today, and I'm going to have to use it and steal it from CBS Sports. The Bengals would be pumpkin pie, because when a pumpkin pie is perfectly done, there is no better dessert. There really isn't. And you get a little whipped cream on it, which you kind of get with the Jamar Chase flair. So I'm going to go Bengals or pumpkin pie. I'm going to go the Reds right now are cranberry sauce. It just looks so good, and it's just not. I mean, you want it to be good, and that's the one dish I can't. My mother used to put it on the Thanksgiving table. I think she's the only one that ever ate it. And it looks good. It's sitting there. It looks like a nice little, kind of like a jam, and it's just dreadful.
Okay, so that's pretty good. Can I tell you my cranberry sauce take?
Yes.
I was going to go FC Cincinnati is cranberry sauce because it's not for me. It's clearly not for me, but the people who like it really love it.
That's a good one. So I'll go their sweet potatoes for me, because I know, like I said, I know people. I just can't do my sweet potatoes. So yeah,
that's similar reasoning.
Good analogy. Yes, that's a perfect analogy.
Okay, what do you got? What do you got for the Reds? What are the Reds?
No, they're the cranberry sauce. They're the cranberry sauce for me. They're the
Oh,
ones
okay.
that they're the ones that it just looks so good on paper that it just doesn't get there.
That's right. I'm sorry. That's how we got to cranberry sauce.
Yes,
So,
yes.
and then FC Cincinnati, you said is your sweet potato
Sweet
casserole?
potatoes, yeah.
Okay. I'm going Reds are the turkey to me because they're like the main dish. They're dry. You don't really like it, but they're always going to be there because it's Reds country and everyone loves them. And they're like the Reds are never going to fade away from Cincinnati. They're always going to be hugely important, even if they're so dreadful. But they're just right now they're dry and they're not the best part of the dinner, but whatever. They're still there. And the Bengals for me, I think. I don't know. Your pumpkin pie was pretty damn good with that. I think that's the one to go with right there. I think you nailed that.
All right,
The,
good
the
deal.
pumpkin pie was perfect. Rank these Thanksgiving foods from best to worst.
Okay.
Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie, mac and cheese.
Not a big mac and cheese guy. I'll eat it, and I don't do it for Thanksgiving only because I've already got stuffing, I've already got mashed potatoes, and I usually always have green bean casserole plus turkey. That's quite enough for me. The mac and cheese is just like piling on at that point, in my opinion. It's just too much. So I'll rank cranberry sauce last, mac and cheese second to last. I'll go mashed potatoes. I eat them because you got to have like a side. I'm going to go stuffing, then turkey, and then pumpkin pie number one.
And then the green bean casserole you slot in there.
Green bean casserole. Actually, I came back. Green bean casserole will be slotted below the mashed potatoes.
Okay.
I usually do green bean casserole because I like green beans themselves better than green bean casserole, but everybody always makes the casserole right with the little onions on top. And so you take it. It's not my favorite because, again, I like just regular old green beans. So, yeah, the casserole part, I do it, but I'm not overly fond of it.
I prefer the casserole. Also, you not being a mashed potatoes guy is wild. I would have lost that. I mean, how do you not like mashed potatoes?
I put a bigger dollop of stuffing than I do mashed potatoes on my Thanksgiving plate.
I do that too. I'm a big stuffing guy for sure. Yeah, I like stuff. I'm surprised stuffing gets a bad rap. Like people are kind of in or out on stuffing. There's a lot of people who don't like it. And I feel like, how do you not like stuffing?
It's so weird. We don't have it in the house at the moment. We haven't had it probably, but my mom used to keep stovetop stuffing around, and we'd have it with different meals, like a pork roast now and again. But we don't ever do that here. And I love stuffing, but it still feels like the one time a year I eat stuffing is Thanksgiving.
Well, I've always said that it's like, it's weird. I mean, I'm not the originator of that take. Everyone's brought that up of like, we should eat stuffing for more meals than just on Thanksgiving. Yes. But I feel like no one does that anymore. Like maybe it was more popular when people made more home cooked meals, but yeah, I never see anyone do that anymore. Hear of it. What's the most overrated Thanksgiving dish and what's the ideal replacement for it?
Well, I don't think there's an ideal replacement. Gravy's overrated to me. I don't do gravy on anything on Thanksgiving. I know people do. They love their gravy. I'm just not a gravy guy.
I would say gravy has the best potential to be ruined. A lot of people do bad gravies, but if a gravy's good, I
like the taste of turkey, actually. I don't want it to be swallowed whole by that. Same. I like mashed potatoes with a little bit of butter and salt and pepper. I don't want gravy on top of all that. I'm going to go gravy. I don't even know what the replacement would be for that.
You just don't need one, right? In your case.
You don't, right.
Yeah, you just don't need to top it.
Just go without.
I would say turkey is the most overrated, and I think prime rib would be the ideal replacement.
Well, so the guy I coach basketball with at Beechwood, he actually said to me, he goes, "Yeah, looking forward to Thanksgiving." I said, "Yeah, we're going over to people's house. We're all bringing dishes. It's going to be a great time." So, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Go to my mom and dad's." And she asked me this year what we wanted. We're having steak. And I said, "Seriously?" He goes, "I don't like turkey that much." He goes, "If you gave me a choice between turkey and steak, I'd take steak." I said, "Yeah, I would too, but I do like the turkey."
Would.
Right, I do like the turkey here and there.
Yeah, I mean, everyone would choose steak over turkey. I think most people feel like they like turkey enough, and it's the Thanksgiving thing to do, so you do it for tradition. I'm one that I don't even really care about turkey. I could just go without it completely.
Yeah, I like it. I like the leftovers. But to your point on Christmas, for Christmas meal, I know that tradition is usually ham, but we do a prime rib for Christmas.
We do too on one side of the family, and it is fantastic.
I look forward to that every year. Me too.
I'm a big prime rib guy. Texas Roadhouse, the weekend prime rib occasionally.
Outstanding.
Great deal.
It is. I agree with that.
Yeah. What's one dish Skinny could bring to Thanksgiving dinner that he knows he wouldn't screw up personally?
The
dinner rolls.
That's a great question. Yeah. Yeah. The Sister Schuberts.
The bag
Just bring them
salad.
pop. Read the directions. Just the bag salads are going. No, the Sister Schuberts, because I make those myself when I actually make a home cooked meal. When I usually a home cooked meal for me is I'll get baked chicken. I'll do green beans in the bag, if you will, in the microwave, and then I'll put the Sister Schubert. So all you gotta do is read how long they have to cook and at what temperature. I could do that.
I think you just said your home cooked meal is baked chicken and then two things out of a bag that you heat.
That's about right. And corn out of the bag. Actually, I'll do that one too.
Three things out of a bag.
Yeah.
Excuse me. If Skinny is picking one Bengals player, former or current, in his prime for his Turkey Bowl game at Idlewild Park, who would he choose?
Boy, I choose Anthony Munoz because honestly, you could put him anywhere. I could hand him the ball and he'd be the best guy on the field running the ball because he's so damn athletic, right? And we all played it. Remember, we all played against that guy in pickup football, right? The guy that you're like, why didn't he play high school football? Because he was enormous. You could never tackle him. He could run. I think Anthony Munoz would be impossible in a pickup football game. He would just destroy it. Let me just tell you, my favorite pickup football story. A guy I roomed with in college walked on to Kentucky's football team. He went to Newcath, and I don't even know how we became. We lived on the same dorm floor as freshmen, and we became friends. We played baseball against each other in high school, so I knew him a little bit through that. But his brother, actually his twin brother, played football at Notre Dame. So we played a pickup football game on Thanksgiving one year where I was quarterbacking, and I rolled out, set my feet to throw an out and up pass, and he hits me. This guy played defensive tackle at Notre Dame. He hit me between my shoulder blades with his head. I thought I had died. And again, he's not Anthony Munoz size, right? He was a big guy. I will tell you that. Again, he played defensive tackle at Notre Dame.
That we covered at Newcath?
A nephew, I believe. Oh, okay. No, I tell you, he had a daughter. He had a daughter who played basketball at Newcath. Oh, you said Mike Kiernan was his name.
Okay.
His brother Joe. Yeah. And boy, Mike hit me between the shoulder blades so hard. I'm like, oh my God. So I can only imagine what Anthony Munoz would do if he hit normal guys like us in a pickup football game.
Well, so that's if you're playing tackle, that's a good one. What if it's a flag football game? Who do you go with? I'm thinking John Ross.
Chad. Oh, I was going to say Chad Johnson.
Chad Johnson would be the rightful name,
because
John Ross is the underrated Turkey Bowl name. Could you imagine him in like a pickup Thanksgiving Day?
Yeah, he'd run by and
catch it.
Right, he'd run by you and then he'd drop it. You'd be so mad at him for that.
No one would catch him.
The thing about Chad is, you script plays in the huddle right on your hands. Like, Jimmy, you go down here, button hook. Freddie, you do an out and up. Chad, just go get open because that's what he's going to do. He's not going to run the route. He's just going to go get open.
Well, and also the great thing about Chad in that scenario is he'd actually care about winning a Turkey Bowl game.
Absolutely.
Like, he'd be into it. He'd be making content from it for you. Like, he would be the right guy to invite. He'd make it fun. And
then he'd take us all to McDonald's afterwards.
Yeah, that's a Thanksgiving dinner at McDonald's. Lunch at McDonald's, yeah.
Exactly.
This is the last question here. Does Skinny have any good stories about Thanksgiving mishaps or family brouhahas?
No, ours was usually when my uncle would come over and proceed to drink all the gin, and we would end up playing the night. My uncle, my dad, and my uncle's son-in-law. I had this Sports Illustrated football game. We would all play that till like the wee hours of the morning. It was my favorite thing to do because you take it. We take a team blindly. They had these play sheets for each team, and you'd roll the dice, and you'd have to call your play, whatever. I loved that game, and none of my friends would ever play it with me. So like the only time I'd ever get to play it was on like holidays, Thanksgiving or Christmas, when they would come over to our house because my mother would be the one that would make dinner. And we watched football obviously during the day and all that. So that wasn't a mishap. That was kind of a fun time, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I know you heard it, but I'll just refresh your memory in case you might have forgot. But I was listening to our buddy Jed Demusie's podcast. It used to be Tough Sledding. Now it's called Old Sports Stories. And Jed was talking about his family Thanksgivings where all the guys in the family would come over to his parents' house and just rip heaters and play cards for like 8 hours in the basement. I'm like, what a different time. I forgot about times where like the entire family would be smoking cigarettes inside the house on a holiday.
Yep, that's I can completely picture something like that.
So I can smell it.
Yeah,
I
right.
So yeah, like how when you open the door to the basement, how it wafts up and just.
My mother and father were both smokers.
Yeah, that's tough, but also a great core memory there from Jed.
That is a good one.
All right, that's all we got.
All right, I'm going to save the ice cream one for next week because it's a ranking list. I love the question. I've ranked them, so I'll save that one for next week.
Okay, that went straight through you. I didn't see that one, so I wasn't skipping whoever sent that.
Nope, I got that one. So he knows.
Right.
He knows that I've got it. So there we go. Thanks, appreciate it. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. We'll be back next week. For Rick Broering, I'm Richard Skinner. It's been the Skinny Podcast, the weekly Potpourri edition, presented by Blake, the Attorney Mason.